This is Synchronicity.
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 Welcome to Synchronicity. My guest this week is Chi Amsterdam. He told me, I said, well, last name. He said, just use Amsterdam. So Chi Amsterdam. It's a pretty cool name. Sounds like a movie character. Great conversation. Chi is in Amsterdam doing these truffle therapy retreats, which is truffles are, you'll hear in this episode, but basically this condensed, I think it's the it's underground part of before the mushroom comes up. It's like all this compacted stuff in there. And so that's legal in Amsterdam. I guess mushrooms used to be psychedelic mushrooms, but then there was some propaganda, something. We get into a little of that too. But now truffles are legal and they've been doing these therapy things. Same active ingredients, psilocin and psilocybin, and very cool stuff he's up to with the group of people out there. You'll hear all about that in this episode. It was real nice speaking to him. When you talk to someone and you can just sense very early on in the conversation that they're being completely transparent about their experiences and kind of where they've been. And not to say if you don't feel comfortable doing that, there's anything wrong, but some people are like, you know what, have a real comfortability, is that a word I'm going with? I guess so. Level with sharing parts of themselves and especially traumatic things too. And Chi is absolutely that type of dude. And I really appreciated it. And we got into some really cool stuff and got into these big questions that I think a lot of people are dealing with. Like, how do we not fuck up the earth? How do we not fuck up ourselves? How do we take more accountability and responsibility for our actions individually and collectively? Try to come up with a few answers to that and see what general themes are emerging. So yeah, that's what this conversation is about. Big thank you to everyone who's been reaching out recently. I've just got I don't know what it is, but there's been an influx of communications and I have caught up as of releasing this episode. I hope I have responded the way you would have liked. Everyone was very friendly. That Psychosis and Synchronicity episode is really, the solo ones, I always just feel like I'm rambling anyway, and in the intros. And so it just feels like for me, those solo episodes, but I'm just rambling for like 45 minutes, but apparently people like them. So I'll try to pepper those in as much as possible. I wasn't going to do a sponsorship thing this week, but I realized this episode is about mushrooms, and I have legitimately been drinking I finally have a favorite product from Four Sigmatic. This is what I'm trying to tell you. I have sampled now every single thing that they have sent me, which was an astounding amount of stuff and variety of things. So I really now know what I like. And the mushroom elixir with lion's mane, it's a little fruitier than the other ones. I very much enjoy. I'm going to take a sip of it right now. This is even planned. It's like citrusy. It's really yummy. It's really good. So I recommend that if you're looking to do it. A reminder, if you go to foursigmatic.com/sync, SYNC, you get 15% off your first order. Go do that. I can see who's going there and how many of you people are going there and getting stuff. Keep it up. It's a great way to support the show and see if you like this stuff. Mushrooms are good. This episode, if anything you're going to learn about this episode, is mushrooms are our friends. And I think the Four Sigmatic people are doing some cool shit. So there you go. Boom. Nailed it. Anything else I got going on? New music. Been working on new music. Oh, I picked up a sweet little piece of gear for people who make music. The Arturia Key Step. I needed a new MIDI keyboard, a MIDI controller, but a compact one I could take on me with trips or wherever I'm going. And I needed something that wasn't like janky, and I didn't need a million fucking beat pads and knobs and all of this stuff. And I got this Key Step the other day, and it's the perfect thing. It's amazing. I would recommend if you want knobs and faders and things, just get another MIDI controller for that and use it exclusively for that. Livid makes some nice stuff. But man, love it. So that's been good. Music has been happening. Hope all is well with you. Let's just get to the episode. How about that? Without further ado, here is Chi. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing really good. Just have been having quite some calls last few days, just the schedule filling up and just connecting with people all around the world and talking about mushrooms. And there's a huge shift happening in this world. Like, people are realizing that they have to wake up a little bit and they have to take action. There's no more waiting for anybody to do anything for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that does seem to be a really big message. Well, you want to just get started? We'll just jump right in.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you very much for having me here.
I'm excited based on our last conversation and just finding out a little bit more about you and kind of what you're doing. I thought a cool place to start. I usually don't do this, but I think you're doing something sufficiently unique that it would be a good place to start. Is could you just tell me what you're doing, who you are, and kind of what you're doing over there in Amsterdam and kind of what your vision is? Because it's unique. It's not something that's available to other people in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Well, and this is something I can answer in so many ways, because part of me, like a very deep part of me, understands that it's not me doing anything. It's really the mushroom working through me. But I will answer it in a conventional way, just so people have some kind of frame of reference. We have this little organization called Truffles Therapy, and we do private and group magic truffle retreats. So magic truffles are the sort of underground cousins of magic mushrooms, and in the Netherlands, it's openly sold in smart shops and widely available. And the reason why magic truffles are used and not magic mushrooms is because in 2008, the Dutch government banned magic mushrooms after some stories came out of people supposedly doing some bad things and committing suicide while they were in, on
regular propaganda that you'll hear.
Yes,
related to psychedelics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And who knows? I read one report that said they did a study afterwards and they didn't find any traces of mushrooms in any of these people. So who knows what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Truffles Therapy started when I started listening to the call of the mushroom and what it wanted me to do, and it told me to have some ceremonies. And that was in middle of April, and then we organized this event called Magic Mushroom Day Conscious Celebration on September 22nd. And there's this global movement, the 920 Coalition, that really wants to turn 920 into sort of the 420 of magic mushrooms. And so we just did it on a whim. We just created a Facebook event and had a vision of what we wanted to create. And within a month, we created this event that was almost 200 people showed up, and we collaborated with the Psychedelic Society of the Netherlands. And it was our first entry into this world. And then things just blossomed. Like, mushrooms have their own way of working. And
yes,
it really we just follow the guidance of the mushrooms, and it's expanded into all the different types of projects. But the main one is Truffles Therapy, and taking people out into nature and giving them a beautiful experience, and creating the safe space, allowing them to be vulnerable, open, and allowing for healing to take place.
I'm curious, what's the main difference between truffles and mushrooms?
So they're both part of the same fungus, and the mushrooms are the conditions necessary for mushrooms to grow are quite stringent. And so when the conditions aren't ripe for the mushrooms to grow, the mycelium underground, which are the white
Yeah.
sort of tentacle-like things, they sort of curl into each other and form these storage balls of energy and food and water, so that when the conditions do turn ripe, then the fungus uses these truffles to blossom into mushrooms.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I never knew that. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very interesting, because that's kind of like this reservoir of energy that's going to be put into something that really can have a transformative impact on anything that ingests it.
Exactly. It's really the unrealized potential. And it has the same basically effects as magic mushroom. I mean, some people say it's weaker or whatever.
Yeah.
But in my experience, if you take enough of truffles, it can lead to as profound of experiences as you can have on mushrooms. It has the same chemicals, psilocybin and psilocin, in it.
Right, which are the active compounds. I find this fascinating, and I love that you're referring to things like the mushrooms working through you, because from my personal experiences, and a lot of people who have, very much identify and view the mushroom and psilocybin as, an ally in a lot of ways. That's the same kind of language that's used. It really becomes clear that this is some type of other. And, for some people that can get tricky. It's like, no, how could there be another thing working through you? But when you resonate or identify kind of the mushroom consciousness, it's amazing how it can kind of just work through you. So, I mean, could you talk about personally what that was like for you? Because this has been a relatively quick kind of rocket ship journey already for you. So talk about, a little of your background and maybe usage of psychedelics, and then going into kind of your mushroom friends recently.
Yes. Oh man. So I was born and raised in New York. My mom is Japanese, my dad is Chinese, and I was always intellectually gifted, but didn't feel like the Asian culture, especially Japanese, just suppresses feelings. So I had that deep pain in me, and I was always in the minority in elementary school and middle school. I was one of two Asian kids out of like 300, and in high school I was one of 5 or 6 out of 4, around 440 or 450. So I always had this sort of feeling of not really belonging and wanting to stand out. And so we moved to Arizona when I was almost 13, and then I went to high school and college there. And some things in the family happened. My dad lost a lot of money in the real estate market, and basically it just tore the family apart. So from 17, 18, I mean, I was in deep depression for like up until 29 and 30, really.
Wow.
I was in and out of pretty deep and dark depression and addiction, low self-esteem, basically all the issues of Western society nowadays.
Yeah, it seems like those are the hallmarks.
Yes. And when I had rejected psychedelics, man, I mean, I was on the Buddhist monastic path for quite a while. I was sitting Vipassana retreats and, quite immature still. No matter how much I sat, I was just so narcissistic and
the
self-centered.
mind will do that. Yeah. It can do that.
Yes. And then, still unhappy, searching. Of course, meditation is beautiful practice, and it really prepared me. It really removed a lot of the superficial layers so I could feel myself at a deeper level. And then the mushrooms and psychedelics started calling me. And then I was in San Francisco with some free time on my hands, didn't have financial burden. So I just tried acid for the first time. I had 5 tabs of acid.
Oh, nice. Welcome to the club. Heavy dose first time.
Yeah, that was like shaking my world. That was like an explosion or an earthquake that's just shifted everything I thought I knew about the world. And I had realized how wrong I was and how wrong the society is on psychedelics. And I can see why now, is because it really shifts people's perspectives. It makes people a little bit more weary of institutions and authority, and it makes us question things a lot more.
Yes.
Which is, of course, the reason why these things are illegal in most places.
Yes. Yes.
And then the mushrooms started calling me. It started out with some lighter doses, and then just my body just started. It just really resonated with the mushrooms and the healing that can happen in mushrooms. Crying a lot and just weeping and wailing and just being really soft and feeling my feelings. And the more the mushrooms cleared away the debris in my mind, I felt like, the more I became this empty channel just to receive the wisdom and the messages and the visions that the mushrooms have seen and have collected over a billion years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a little bit of my journey. And then I come to Amsterdam, and one of the main reasons was, magic truffles, and realizing that the potential of having basically unlimited access to psilocybin is something I wanted to tap into. And it was
Yeah.
it was really just the psilocybin calling, right? It's like this deep inner knowing that something is good for me or for us, and then just following it instead of resisting with our mind and making excuses why not to do it.
Yes. This is an interesting point you bring up. I recently, it's funny you mentioned LSD as kind of an explosive catalyst. I had a very similar experience my first time doing it. I was 15. I was pretty young, so it was hard not to. When you take a heavy dose at that age, your mind's going bonkers anyway. But I started microdosing recently again after taking an extended break, and that what you're referring to there, the not ignoring kind of what is, we can call our intuitive faculties, some deeper knowing. When you don't ignore that or even resist it, like you're saying, the power of that is just incredible. And it's not something that I want to present as your life just gets better and easier and your intuition is always going to be 100% right. But what I think it kind of opens up is this openness to experiences. And if it's not a good one, you get that feedback and you pursued it kind of wholeheartedly, and there won't be this kind of nagging doubt or fear attached to it. So even if it's not a great decision, it still sits well with your overall being. And it's very interesting because mushrooms had a similar effect on me, through my 20s, mid 20s, especially, and younger 20s, the same kind of, being able to drop deeper into your emotional feelings and intuitive faculties, which honestly, Western culture is a huge part of it, but especially for men in Western cultures. And this is something that I'm getting a little more sensitive to because, I realize a lot of men have trouble with this and don't realize it. They haven't done Vipassana or psychedelics and have gotten to kind of these deeper truths of who they are. And there's these resistances that really hurt and kind of hamper people, and they hold on to this trauma forever. And like, honestly, dude, also thank you for sharing kind of some deep personal things that happened to you, because I think a lot of people can listen to podcasts or read about people who are, influencers or thought leaders and talking about these things and forget that a lot of this has to do with healing more than anything else. It's not about, being the person who's known for the truffle resort or the person who has the podcast, but it's really about getting to these things these shared experiences that we have modalities to heal. I'm very much impressed with your kind of overall journey into doing this. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And a couple of comments on what you just said. There's a quote that says something like, "A Zen master's life is one continuous mistake."
Yeah, it feels like
and really it's really opening ourselves up to imperfection and being just a human being. Like, we're just children on this earth, right? We don't know anything, basically. And it's returning to that not knowing state and living in that question and wonder and curious. And this is a shift that has to happen in humankind, and especially Western culture, is this pursuit of knowledge, of understanding. It can be really detrimental when our egos and our sense of self is wrapped around how much we know.
Yes.
Like we live in such luxury in the West. Like why do we put our stress on ourselves having to know stuff? and why not just be curious, and why label all these everything with science and make rationality the king instead of, like, what about feeling? Isn't feeling just as worthy of investigating? Why does it have to be theory? Why can't it just be, I don't know. I don't know why I have 5 fingers. I don't know why human beings need water to survive. Like, I don't know why human beings die. I don't know why life is only 80 years long rather than like 500. Why is it that animals have different lifespans? Like, we don't know any of this, basically. I mean, of course it can be explained through theories, but did anyone of us live like 200,000 years ago? Do we really know what happened?
Right. And it is kind of the aim. This is where the logic and kind of analytical benefits of empirical science, which have really just discernibly on the physical plane, have helped in many ways. Like, vaccines are generally very, very good. They help millions of people. They eradicate diseases in a lot of places that, otherwise would have it. Polio and smallpox, things that were just, if you read about historical accounts, were just devastating. There's clearly advances that are made, but when it does kind of come, or it's at odds with this kind of less rational, more intuitive, there's no real great explanation for why this is happening, but yet we feel that this is the right thing to do. It really has a way of kind of flexing its muscles. This is scientific materialism, and crushing that. And I think this is also, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about this, it seems also like this fundamental energetic conflict that is now beginning to kind of loosen and potentially shift the other way, which is masculine and feminine energies. And I don't mean men and women. I don't mean necessarily that guys are like this and women are like this. It's these energies that are associated with, and kind of these creative forces that create the world we live in. And it's very clear that the patriarchal system that has been in place for Western culture has not done it as many favors as it's done detrimentally to the rest of the world, to entire groups of people. So it is kind of something that seems to be shifting. And I think that's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons that you're really involved with kind of this psilocybin and truffles and mushrooms is that it really gets to that pretty damn quickly if you get involved with mushrooms enough. You know what I mean?
Oh, undoubtedly. It gets to the core of what it means to be human, and what it's, not even what it means, but what it's like, beyond all the superficial conditioned layers, those false drives that we're conditioned with, like the drive for money. That's like a man-made, fabricated drive.
Yes.
It was back in the day, the men gathered and they went and hunted together, and then they came back and they were part of the community. And a big part of the healing that has to happen now is people getting together in circles and talking and sharing about their real life, not putting on masks. It's about trusting human beings, each other once again. And yeah, getting off the computer and cell phone. I know it's difficult, and I fall into this all the time, but I mean, sometimes I go through days where I check my phone a lot, and it's like, it's a sickness, it's an addiction. And it's, of course, this is going a little off tangent. And also back to the feminine and masculine, really that receptivity of the feminine, just sitting still and being open, is something that's all the shamanic and spiritual and religious traditions, they teach that, yeah, you have to listen to God, basically. You have to listen to the divine, or to whatever it is, like that which is greater than your body and mind. And you got to follow that wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And all the greatest masters in the Buddhist tradition, at least, I mean, they are all so in touch with their feminine.
Yeah.
Whereas in this masculine Western, this financially driven Western culture, it seems like it's portrayed as a weakness to feel things and to not be driven.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. And I don't think it's actually a tangent to go off on the cell phone stuff. I'll try to tie it together with what you're saying is, yeah, man, like, and when we refer to as the Western financial system, let's be clear, that's the global system at this point. It has dominated the world. It's how countries and nations and people who want to be in power positions get to that place. It is completely financially driven. And it's very clear to see just in our own lives how money has probably an undue influence on our minds. I mean, that's very apparent for anyone who has a family that is dependent on them, or they have to just meet ends meet every month. You know, it is very clear how much this dominates our psyche. It's interesting, though, that the antidote to a lot of this is exactly what you referred to. It's getting together, talking with people, and we're allowed to use technology to aid these things. It can be a neutral tool that benefits us, but when it shifts into this kind of, you know, consumptive, I have to do this, I feel like I'm doing this, I don't know why I'm doing it, but it's just habitual. That's, I think, another symptom of kind of this imbalance between what we know we should be doing, which is getting together, communing, forming strong communities to potentially brace for what will need to be, let's be clear, in the coming decades. We're going to have to change as a people, as society, as a human population, many of our behaviors if we want any semblance of what it's like now to remain for the people who come after us. Like, that is we can maybe push this off for another 10 years of actual like understanding. And that's what I think a lot of people are thinking. But then shit is going to hit the fan just ecologically. Like, that much should be abundantly clear to people. So while I don't want that to sound overly pessimistic or, apocalyptic, the antidote is right in front of our eyes. If we together as individuals and small communities initially start having conversations about this, what are little things we can do to change our lives and make the lives of ourselves and the people around us better, that then does begin to form the seeds of what catalyzes into like global change. So I'd be interested from your experiences working with people, at what you're doing over there in Amsterdam, what are some of the themes and changes you see people go through when they kind of get, initiated into this, so to speak?
Yeah. And that's a good word, initiated. And just speaking on that word, I mean, for me, it's been an honor to be initiated into the magical world of mushrooms and fungi. And initiated can also have this negative connotation in our Western world, because we sort of associate it with maybe like fraternities initiating and hazing people. And it's actually this, for me, initiation is like surrendering our personal small will to the will that which is greater than ourselves, whatever we want to call it, nature, God, mushrooms, the divine. There's something that is invisible to the naked eye, but that moves through life and that carries it forward, and that it's a cycle of life and death. Like, what does this cycle want us to realize about itself? Right? The seasons, and human beings used to live in rhythm with the seasons, and now we're sort of, sometimes we fight against the seasons. Like, we want to be active in winter, whereas before, in wintertime, everyone just huddled up and they didn't go party or anything, basically,
They just tried to stay warm.
Yeah. And so the transformations we've seen, I mean, man, my whole life has transformed, and everybody around me, basically, there's a sense of hope and unity and togetherness, and just eating together, holding hands and saying a blessing, a prayer before a meal, something like that. I mean, some people have never done that in their life. And it's just reconnecting with what's most important. Okay, food and water. Okay, so what does it take to get healthy food and water? Okay, so the earth needs to be healthy and the
Right.
oceans need to be happy and the animals, if we eat any animals, hopefully we don't eat too many animals or none at all, but if we eat any animals, how have these animals been treated?
Yes.
It's really asking these questions instead of taking food and nature as sort of a byproduct of life. Nature and food is life itself. The phone is the distraction, right? The phone is something to put aside. It's not we eat while we're looking at YouTube. It's we turn off our phone and put it as far away from us as
Right.
possible while we respect the food we eat. So it's really just getting back down to simplicity.
What do you think leads people to, like, what do you have any insight, or I'm curious in your thoughts about this technological kind of drive to, it seems that these things are built to take over our time and attention, and the reason it seems like that is because that's precisely what they were intended to do, right? I mean, not necessarily from a malicious way. I don't want to make this seem that there's some grand conspiracy, but that if I'm designing an iPhone and I'm designing applications for an iPhone, my goal is to get someone to use this and like using
for
it and
sure.
want to use it more. So these systems kind of take over our consciousness and silo us off from any real type of genuine connection. And I think what you said is important. Like, it's not necessarily throw your phone away and just ditch technology completely. The phone can be a beautiful thing. I can text someone or call someone or connect with someone on a podcast, very easily from these devices, which is an amazing magical power. But if it becomes our go-to kind of magic wand for every single thing, we then lose that genuine human connection, which I think is like, people always want to know, like, what can I do to make my life better? What can I do to heal trauma? What skills do I need to do? Do I have to meditate? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? And really the simplest answer anyone can provide is that you just need to talk to people you trust and love, right? That's like really I can tell you, I've done a lot of different modalities, a lot of different things, all have their benefits, all have their downsides, but the most profound like moments of transformation for me, whether on psychedelics or not, are the conversations I'm having with other people. You can get to insights yourself, you can get downloads, but what use of it is if it's just for you, right? I mean, that's a very important thing. So I love that you kind of honed in on this, but yeah, I mean, what is it about our world that you think drives this kind of conflict between our attention being siphoned off into our own little bubbles and that being at odds against our, probably what's best for us is to communicate and talk with other people? What do you think is kind of the crux of that? I know you might not have an answer.
Yeah, it's, I think about this literally all the time. I really, deep down, my mission in life is for myself also to reconnect to nature because, I was born and raised in New York and Arizona, and I grew up thinking that money was the end all be all. And it's taken a long time to wake up from that. And it's really just getting back in touch with nature. And, a lot of the applications we see for the retreats are depression, anxiety, lack of purpose. Those seem to be the three main issues. And I think a lot of the depression and anxiety comes from feeling unsafe and unseen and not feeling like part of something. Whereas in reality, we are just part of the whole. So a lot of the applications, especially social media, makes us feel like an individual. It makes us feel like we have to prop up this image of ourselves to the world. And it really is not how things are. It's normal for people to have ups and downs. It's normal for people to have emotions and to feel sad and angry sometimes, and to be able to show and express these things without being judged is the most important thing. So it's really creating that safe spaces. Humans, we just need to volunteer our time. So this is a whole nother thing, is people think that they need to be paid for everything, or or a lot of people just have really good hearts and they don't know how to ask for money, or they don't know how to be paid.
Yes.
There's a lot of shame and guilt around the money paradigm
Yes, yes.
that we're seeing now. So it's a huge thing that just starts with every day. Okay, so nature, people, connection, love, joy, peace. How, sharing food, being generous. What do I have that I can share with people? I think that's the question that we can always ask, is instead of wanting something from the outside world, now what can I give to the world? I think this fundamentally can shift how humanity acts. And if all the wealthy people in the world with more money than they know what to do with for 10 generations, what if they actually put some of this money and influence uh, into action in the world without expecting anything back?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
It isn't a billion more than enough. Like, why do you need 2 or 10? Why not put that billion back into humanity and making this planet a nice place to live for people?
Yes, yes. Well, what you're talking about reminds me a lot of the six paramitas in Buddhism, which is, and there's very specific ones, but one of them is generosity, right? Giving, essentially. And I think that that's something that is at odds with the way most of our systems are set up. And I think you really nailed exactly what a lot of social media does for people, which is, rather than being kind of a connective tool or platform for people, which it can certainly be, a lot of these things, it does feel like a reinforcement of our individual identities, which, yes, on some level are very true. No one's going to deny that you're Chi and I'm Noah. But in reality, these ideas of who Chi and Noah are, for ourselves and for other people, are shifting constantly. It's not this static thing. So when you're constantly trying to pin down this, what you and I are referring to as personas or identities, and social media can do that over and over again, it really does limit you to kind of the broader reality, which is, we're all one thing. We're all interconnected. We're all doing this together. Whether you realize that from a deep esoteric level and kind of the dreamlike nature of our reality, or you just recognize, like, yeah, the golden rule is a pretty good one. Like, do unto others. It's not that complicated. It does seem like this needs to be reinforced, though, over time, because culturally and in society, the dominant paradigm is exactly what you're describing, which is people are concerned about their individual safety, then maybe their nuclear family, and then extended family and friends, and kind of weaving this web that incorporates broader and broader, levels of humanity. It's kind of the only antidote that I can see having a shot at working, of really changing the way everything works. Because what we're talking about, and more and more people agree about what we're talking about, but it's still a very small minority of people. Most people aren't questioning the deeper nature of reality and how we're going to move this thing forward in a positive direction. They're like, how do I put food on my table, or how do I do this, or I just got distracted by this thing. And I think a lot of people are searching for answers to these things, when, again, a lot of them are really simple. They're just kind of hard and shadow work that we don't necessarily want to do. One thing you said really caught my attention, which is, you're privy to applications of people who are coming for therapy and for healing. I mean, that's an amazing kind of meta view of what's going on, which gives you a cool layer of insights. I mean, what else have you gleaned from the types of, like, broad observation? Actually, I have two things to say. That question, but also, I mean, what's the process like? Let's say there's someone listening right now and they're like, you know what? I'm fucking depressed. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm really anxious all the time. I might want to be going. What's the process like for someone who's at that stage?
Oh man, this is it's tough. I mean, I suffered from maybe 10 bouts of deep depression, a few months at a time over the last 12 years or so. So it's really difficult. The thing is to get out behind your computer and to get in touch with nature and just get yourself out of your home and to just be with people, just reintegrate oneself with society, basically. Um, and meditation can help, yoga can help, anything that makes us feel even the slightest bit of calm and joy. Like especially when we're in these deep depressed states, which I've met many people who are, it's that little oomph of motivation that can turn into bigger oomphs of motivation. And then, yes, sometimes we reach a point where we really have to do something radical. I mean, for me at least, it was psychedelics, and still it's not a one hit wonder sort of thing.
Yeah, you're fixed. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no fixing. And maybe that's another one of the paradigm shifts is what we are not the problem to be fixed. We are just a process of nature, and there are certain causes, infinite causes, that led to this process being the way it is, and there's no fixing it like a computer problem or a math problem, or it's not something we can write about or theorize about, or put into a box. It's something that's way vaster than us. And yeah, so I mean, a lot of this depression also comes from a lack of purpose as well. So part of the depression, getting out of depression, is finding some way to help somebody, no matter how small it is. And maybe it starts with ourselves, like helping us sit for 1 minute on a cushion, or to go to one yoga class, or to go take a 10-minute walk. These are little things that we can do, or just even using social media and saying hi to somebody and starting a conversation. Just something like that can help.
How do people typically find you and what you guys are doing in Amsterdam? Like, who are the contingent of people who end up, wanting to take one of these retreats or come visit and stay with you? What's that been
like? It seems like most of the people who come are relatively physically healthy men from like age 28 to 40 something who lack meaning and purpose in life. Like, they have money, they have a job, they're doing fine on the surface, but deep down they have this existential crisis. They feel like they aren't doing anything meaningful, or that they're stuck somehow. This seems to be the majority. Of course, those are for the paid retreats, and by donation retreats, which we put on, which we want to shift more and more to. It seems like a lot of young people who want to heal, who have seen how they're misfits, they just feel like they have to heal. And a lot of these are young women who aren't in touch with their femininity. They've been sort of put into this system where they have to put on this masculine face and this armor and the shield, and they just feel like they're not aligned with themselves. So I mean, it's such a broad spectrum of people, to be honest with you.
No, but you said two things that I think are probably tapping into one of the special things that you can provide with what you guys are doing there, which is there's a lot of masculine trauma. And I don't just mean men. I'm glad you brought up that women can experience this too. There's a lot of trauma that comes along with that and trying to have to fit into the system that we do. And that can get lost in the conversation when we see what is a righteous and necessary backlash against patriarchal systems of abuse, sexual power, all of these things. That needs to happen. It needs to be called out. There's no doubt about it. But what can get lost in that kind of necessary moral outrage and indignation is that there's a swath of people who just grew up in this, who have no fucking idea how they got here, why it is the way it is, but yet they carry that with them and are seeking that to be healed. And there's not a lot of people, man, just to be clear about this. And that's why it's really cool that you guys have been, that's a cross section you notice, is there's not a lot of people offering that type of space to heal in. Usually for men or masculine trauma that's associated with that, it's a method. It's a thing you're paying for, a routine, or you take this and it's nootropics, or you work out this way with the kettlebells and you go and do ayahuasca twice a year and you're definitely going to be fine. You just focus on making more money and all these things. And that's really doing a tremendous disservice from people who are in touch with the trauma from being, you know, masculine energy in the paradigm we live in, and like providing a space where you can use psilocybin to kind of navigate and be a bridge into a more kind of holistic way of being. That's really fucking cool, man. That's very, very cool, because I know of almost no other. I mean, we were speaking about a little bit off air last week, but a lot of these big organizations, you know, in this country, you know, that where psilocybin isn't legal, the masculine ego games that can get in there from all sides, it's just destroys the pure intention of using these things to help people. But it seems like you've kind of found a cool subversive way to do it.
Yeah. And this conversation can go, you know, to very, very deep levels. It really is this, it's human beings being turned into machines in the system. This is the trauma. Like the young girls we see, and of course also the older women, they weren't meant to be cogs in the machine. They weren't meant to rise up in hierarchies. And it seems like, I mean, not to say that women can't. There are people who rise up in male dominated hierarchies, and that's fine. And also look at what these women turn into. They probably are not so in touch with their emotions because they have to suppress it, you know. And this is also, this is getting in touch with the greatest pain. Is there is pain in all women in general being suppressed over the centuries and millennia, and it's totally understandable, and it's really real, and it's deep, really, really deep trauma of being raped and used and abused and just held down and not being given a voice, and not being given the ability to achieve. And also to understand that sometimes the things we're taught about the feminist movement and the independent woman and the career woman, like, who is putting out these agendas? Who wants women to be career women? You know, who wants women to not create families and to go into the workforce instead? Who wants to use young girls just for their pretty face and body and just toss them aside as they get older, just for the new round of young women? So it's really asking the deeper questions, like, is this really serving me? Is being an independent career woman really what deep down my biology and my body and my mind really wants? You know, I know so many women who can't have children either because of hormonal issues, and also there's issues with male sperm. Like, male sperm is getting weaker in the world. And people might say this is like a conspiracy or something, but man, there's many women I've talked to that are like, yeah, just there aren't very many strong men in the world.
Well, I will tell you this: the myth of smoking weed and not being fertile is just a myth, and I prove that very clearly by siring at this point, which is going to be 2 boys come this summer. So yeah, man, like, here's the truth: like, there's what you're saying is absolutely true, and what really has got me thinking about how movements evolve and kind of manifest. And the feminist movement is one that, admittedly, I don't know nearly enough to comment, you know, cogently on the subtleties and where these things evolve from. But I have been really listening to this Frederick Douglass biography that just came out last year, and it's fucking amazing because they give you all of these different scenarios for the abolition of slavery, for what that actually means, for Reconstruction. And you realize how people who share the same ultimate goal, which is equality, right, can come at it from so many different angles. And ultimately, because these people are advocating for something pretty radical, that they can be at odds with each other because they're so believing in this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think a lot of this, what happens with a lot of these conversations is we lose the nuance and the subtlety of what actually is driving a lot of these motivations, either collectively or individually. And yeah, I mean, the hormonal stuff that's happening, I mean, I don't view it, you know, a lot of people say, well, it's just the food. The food is a huge problem with a lot of these things, but to me, it always is a holistic thing, right? If one aspect of society is going wrong, it's going to affect all other things. If the spiritual and emotional bodies aren't working well together, we're going to see this manifest symptomatically across society. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I wonder, you know, how many people have felt that in the name of equality, men and women, that they need to achieve this kind of ideal of, you know, being successful in Western culture's eyes, which may just be a total ruse, right? And which really is, let's be clear. So yeah, it's a very important thing you're mentioning for sure.
Yeah, and it really is systemic. It's what is driving people? What is this feeling of scarcity and insecurity where we feel incomplete no matter how much money we have in our bank account? We're always, and when we say we, I'm saying collective as a human being, especially this Western culture, is just chasing that dollar. You know, of course we do have to make money, but when is enough enough? Like, does a family of 4 need like 100,000 a month to live? No, you know, and again, it's returning to simplicity and going back to what you were saying about not many companies doing this kind of work with psilocybin, we really feel blessed to. It's really a calling to be called into this world of the magic mushrooms and magic fungi, and to be able to be a representative of it. And this is what's missing in society for the most part, is this calling of people dedicating their lives to something that is beyond themselves, not to a company, not to Google, Facebook, Microsoft, whatever the big names are, not to a bank. How can you dedicate yourself to a bank? You know, and how can you dedicate all your skills and talents into going up this hierarchy, whatever it might mean, and making millions? And this is stuff that I think a lot of people need to discuss, and it needs to be more in the open. You know, what is the underlying system in which all of us human beings are in, and what are the parts that are working and what are the parts that are not working, and really holding space to listen to people's pains and suffering, and not covering it up with, you know, going back to what we were saying about experts, is who cares what the experts say? What do the masses say? Right? If experts say one thing, but the masses say a whole nother thing, then who do we listen to? Do we still listen to the expert?
Quote unquote expert. Yeah.
You know, and it's this kind of feeling of solidarity with other human beings, with normal, ordinary human beings. And it's the whole idea of seeing ourselves as ordinary, feeling that we are just a little speck of dust. Like, how are we any special? One human being, how many human beings have come and gone through our history? Like billions, right? Like how are we the one thing going to be so special and so different? No, we're actually not that different from each other. We're really the same. We have a face, we have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 ears. You know, we have to go to the bathroom several times a day. We have to sleep. We can only live under one roof. We can only eat so much food in a day. So it's really connecting to how similar we actually are. And I think dialogue is a big part of it, and having compassion for both our own suffering and for the suffering of other people, and letting go of these ideals, these high benchmarks we have for each other and for ourselves. You know, we look at people in the scientific world, they look at someone with a bachelor's and they say, you haven't done anything. And then you get a master's and you go, I still only have a master's. I don't have a PhD. And then PhDs look at MDs and think, oh gosh, I'm just a fake doctor. So like, where do these ideas of insufficiency come in, and how do we learn how to become sufficient and to be happy and content with what we are and what we have?
Yeah, I mean, that I think you just summed up what is a struggle for the majority of people who find themselves kind of implanted in this system. The beauty of it is, and something you said reminded me of this, is, well, we're all we're specks of dust if you zoom out far enough, and not even that far. The beauty and kind of the art, I feel like, of being alive and living is you get to express that sameness in your own unique and creative way. And that seems to be one of the core components of reality that I enjoy so much, is that like it is endlessly astounding how everyone is pretty much the same. Like we the same shit makes us upset. This, like, there's gradations on it, but for the most part, it's pretty similar. But how different people, I have a lot of these long form, deep conversations with people, and you don't meet the same person ever. People look the same more than they are actually the same. So it's a very interesting thing. And I love that, we are able to both zoom out and recognize our kind of smallness and how infinitesimally small we are, but also we can zoom in and appreciate, like, well, what the fuck am I here for? How do I contribute to this broader thing? And I think what creates so much of this trauma and stress for people, and just like anxiety and all of these things, is when we just make the misapprehension that that little thing that is very cool and very special and very unique is all of it. And that we're living the illusion of central position, and this is all for us all the time. And if I get this much, then everyone will love me. And it's like, oh, well, we see what happens when you're that type of person. You end up with being Donald Trump, and it's like, that's his thing, man. Like, if that's for him, cool. But like, yeah, it's a very delicate dance, because it feels like we're still very much in a transitional period between the industrial age and another coming age, which we don't really know what it is because we're in it. And it feels like if we're going to bridge that gap, doing a lot of the things you've been speaking about, like healing these traumas in a very, natural and kind of organic way, like that's our bridge. That's our bridge to a society where, our grandchildren's grandchildren could be talking about, can you believe they used to like fight over this shit? Or there used to be like a monetary system where like everyone couldn't have health care or like be fed. And they'll be like, yeah, those people were idiots. So it's our job as idiots to get to that reality and start building those things. And it's cool, man, that you're actually doing that. So how would people go about working or coming and visiting you?
Yeah, so our website is www.trufflestherapy. That's TRUFFLES therapy.com. And yeah, just look around, feel around, and if you resonate, just send us a message or an application, or we can hop on a call. And of course, if you don't resonate with what we're doing, we also have another website called tripsitters.org, which is TRIPSITTERS.org. And that lists, most of the other trip sitters who are making it known that they're holding space for people for psilocybin ceremonies in the Netherlands. And there's many other retreats in the world, not many, but maybe
other ones,
7 or 8 other retreats in the world. So it's just go with what is in your heart and feels right, and just, it's really just having the courage. Like, if you have a bunch of money sitting around and you're unhappy, spend that money on yourself. Be happy, right? What's all the money in the bank? A figment of our imagination when we're so depressed and don't have a purpose in life. And I just thought of one quote that always rings in my head, is Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Yes, wisdom tells me that I am nothing, and love tells me that I am everything.
Yes.
And between these two, my life flows, or something like that.
Yeah.
And really, it's loving ourselves, not at the sense level, not eating and not listening to music. All that's great, not feeling good things. It's about what our deep down spirit, what nature wants for us is silence and quiet and peace and love, right? This is what it wants. It doesn't want more inputs in terms of words and sounds. It wants harmony with nature, being in touch, right? How many of us get out into nature for a day even, or for a few days, a month, to spend time connecting with trees and animals and not on our phones, right?
Yeah.
And I think reconnecting with nature can really humble us, and it can show us that we're just part of something bigger, right? The trees are just as alive as us. The water is just as alive as us. The birds have a life they cherish just as much as we do, and it's just being in touch with this.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I love what you're saying. You reminded me of one of my favorite Srina Sargartata Maharaj quotes, which is, "The mind creates the abyss, the heart crosses it." And I think we're very much aware that we've created an abyss for ourselves collectively, and now the way to cross that is by kind of dropping into the heart and actually getting these things done.
That's the answer. That's dropping from the head to the heart. You know, you can still be intellectually intelligent. You can know all your theories, and also to know that those theories are just man-made, right? Human beings have just been on this planet for 200,000 years, and who knows how many eons and how many universes in this thing we're living in there are. So it's realizing that we don't really know too much about anything, and being humbled by that.
I like that. I mean, I had a couple conversations with a guest his podcast is coming out today, and I was on his radio show, and he's a psychiatrist. He has his MD, and we were talking about psychosis and synchronicity, and he was asking me about, I was saying, when I was in this state at one point in my life, it was like a dream-like reality, and it became clear to me that, this is very much like a dream. And he kept asking me questions about it. I'm like, I'm trying to explain. But I think you just kind of touched on something that makes sense to me, is like, think about dreams. Think about how little we understand, not only about the phenomena of dreams, but when we're in a dream, assuming that we're not lucid dreaming all of the time. We understand such a little sliver of what the hell is going on in our dream state. And to me, reality is not that much different than a dream state. Yes, we have some observable rules that we can agree on, but it's still pretty fucking crazy what goes on here. And a lot of these little things that pierce the veil at times can remind us that, whether it's psychedelics or synchronicities. So yeah, man, it's certainly this dance of recognizing that, maybe this isn't as real as we think it is, but we do have some reason. It certainly feels intuitively and experientially, for those of us who have these experiences, that there is a reason for it. And if we can identify that reason, which I think it's identifying with the heart, recognizing the balance between the mind wisdom and the heart wisdom, and when to apply them, and when that really does seem to be the goal for most people. But man, This has been an amazing conversation. I'd love to actually have you back on some other time for another hour. I ask 3 quick questions at the end, and then one broader one. So
okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh yeah. You're supposed to not know it.
Okay.
So first question: what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Nice. What's your favorite number?
9. It's always been 9.
I knew that. it popped in my head. Granted,
Did you? Oh, shit. Synchronicity.
I microdosed today, and that is a good thing for precog. What's your favorite animal?
Oh gosh. Well, my spirit animal is definitely the lion. It used to be the cheetah, but now I feel like I've grown into a little bigger cat. And also sometimes I also feel like a butterfly as well. So the lion and the butterfly.
Oh, I like that. The twin answer. Someone should make a drawing of that. And then the last question: what is a practical tip that's helped you in your life? And you've been dropping these all throughout the episode, but another practical tip that's helped you in your life that you could share with people listening. And it could be anything.
It's really love. It's really caring, and it's caring for ourselves, our family, all the animals and the plants and the planet. And it really is about realizing that we belong to the earth and the earth doesn't belong to us. And really getting in touch with learning from indigenous people, getting in touch with the indigenous aspects of ourselves, getting in circles, more circles, less stages, more, let's listen to more suffering, less expertise, less knowledge. Let's connect with each other on the heart level and not the theoretical intellectual level.
Oh man,
so
you just dropped bombs with those last three. Print those on t-shirts, somebody. You'll be rich. Chi, thank you so much for doing this, man. Let's stay connected for sure.
Hey, thank you so much, Noah. Look forward to staying in touch. Thanks.
All right, peace, man. Thanks for listening to that episode. New music coming. You heard some of it there. Go check out Chi at trufflestherapy.com. You can see what he's up to with a lovely group of other people, or should I say a group of other lovely people. I think that's what I meant to say. Support the show. Rate it on iTunes. Some podcasts will tell you, go rate my show 5 stars. And you know what? Great. They got all the 5 stars. They're looking good with their 5 stars. I just rate it. I like your honest feedback. I don't think it does anything besides boost my ego. But that's a good enough reason for me to go do it. So yeah, iTunes. I'm on all the other things, the Spotify's, the Apple Musics, the whatever. We got stuff there too, but go do it on iTunes. It matters. I'm a little loose. This lion's mane stuff is no joke. All right, that's it. I will see you next week.